Xi Jinping and Joe Biden talk on video link to discuss the conflict in Ukraine. Can China and the U.S. help find a pathway to peace in Ukraine? And the power of architecture to breathe new life into resource-challenged communities. As seen in the work of this year's Pritzker Prize awardee, Diébédo Francis Kéré, an exclusive talk about his design philosophy.
I want to say beauty is the right for everyone, We deserve, everyone deserves quality and beauty.
Here's our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight. The program is coming to you live from Beijing. We start today's program focusing on Chinese President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Joe Biden meeting through video link. This is the first time the leaders of the world's two largest economies have spoken to each other since the Russian-Ukraine conflict began. It's been nearly a month since Russia launched a military operation against Ukraine. Though the two sides have started negotiations, the progress is slow and attacks against the Ukrainian cities are ongoing. UN reports more than 700 civilians in Ukraine have died since Russian attack began. That is, some of the numbers indicate 52 of those casualties were children. Another 3 million people have fled the country. China has provided 3 deliveries of humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Well, on Wednesday, President Biden announced the $800 million military aid package for Ukraine. China has been calling for a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. The call between the Chinese and U.S. presidents followed a meeting between top Chinese envoy Yang Jiechi and U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan in Rome earlier this week. The last time the two presidents spoke to each other was 4 months ago in November 2021. And we have just in the latest readout from the Chinese side about what is being said in the meeting between Chinese and the U.S. president. According to the Chinese readout, Chinese President Xi Jinping said that countries should not come to the point of meeting on the battlefield. Conflict and confrontation are not in anyone's interest. Peace and security are what the international community should treasure the most. On the evening of March the 18th, President Xi Jinping from China had a video call with U.S. President Joe Biden at the request of the latter. President Xi noted the new major developments in the international landscape since their first virtual meeting last November. The prevailing trend of peace and development is facing serious challenges, according to the Chinese president. The world is neither tranquil nor stable. The Ukraine crisis is not something we want to say, said the Chinese president. The events again show that countries should not come to the point of meeting on the battlefield. Conflict and confrontation are not in anyone's interest, and peace and security are what the international community should treasure the most, according to the readout by the Chinese side. As permanent members of the UN Security Council and the world's two leading economies, we, according to the Chinese president talking to the U.S. president, must not only guide the China-U.S. relations forward along the right track, but also shoulder our share of international responsibilities and work for world peace and tranquility. That is the content of the latest readout from the Chinese side about the China-U.S. president's video link talk. For more on China-U.S. ties, joining us in Maine in the U.S., Susan Thornton, Senior Fellow of the Pao Tsai China Center of Yale Law School. Good to see you. Susan is also former Acting Assistant Secretary of State from the U.S. Department of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs. In Shanghai, we have Shending Li, Professor at the Institute of International Studies at Fudan University. Last but certainly not least, we're also honored to be joined by Yuan Peng, the President of the China Institutes of Contemporary International Relations, on the phone with us. Let me start by asking all of you on the immediate response to the latest readout I have on hand right here on what the two presidents have been talking about. Let's go to our guest first, Susan.
Well, thank you very much, Tian Wei, and it's really good to be with all of you on this very pivotal day, I think.
Welcome back.
It sounds like the Chinese President Xi Jinping is stressing the need to find peace in Europe and to try to get a ceasefire in this conflict as soon as possible and avoid escalation. And I hope that is what the two presidents are talking about, how the best way is to go ahead and do that. I think it's, we are on the brink of a destabilization of the entire globe with this crisis. Refugee flows, prices of food and energy going up. I mean, it's really a looming disaster for not just Europe, but the entire world. And I hope the two presidents can talk about concrete ways to stop this conflict before it gets worse.
Right. Let me go to also Professor Yuan Peng on the phone with us. Professor Yuan, your immediate response to the readout from the Chinese side?
Yeah, from the Chinese readout, I think our Chinese policy is consistent. In past several days, President Xi has a virtual phone call with French and German leaders, and also Russian leaders, and this time with American presidents. And our policy is very consistent. That is, we want peace and secure world, and we want to negotiate a ceasefire. So I think this is Chinese basic principle. Our policy based on, first of all, international norms. We oppose war, and also we oppose sanctions without permission of our United Nations, and also based on national interest, and also the international reality. So this time, I think U.S. and China, most important thing, just like President Xi mentioned, is peace, and peace is treasure most. And the most important thing is that we need to put all bilateral disputes and contradiction aside for a while. And the U.S. and China, we should hold the international responsibility to focus more on those hottest affairs, that is Ukraine-Russian conflict. This is what the major two powers should do in this moment.
And how do you see the international reality vis-a-vis what is going on from the Chinese readout? Professor Shan Dingli in Shanghai, please.
I think President Xi has made the Chinese position straightforward. First, war and conflict is not what we need. Second, peace should prevail, and we should not let such a trend of peace to be hurt. Third, we call an immediate ceasefire, and all countries, including China, shall work together to make a peace, to return to the region. I think these are the 3 points I take.
Susan, of course, I go to you about further analysis of this. You've been going through wars and conflicts. When you are working for the State Department, things are changing very dramatically, of course, over the past few years. Now, this meeting has been requested or first brought out by the U.S. side. How do you see the timing of this? And will China and the U.S. be able to put aside the differences and really focusing on the urgency of the issue right now the world is facing?
Well, that's a very good question, Tianwei. I think this meeting was actually something that was long in the works. I mean, we saw the travel by Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, to Rome to meet his counterpart Yang Jiechi earlier this week to prepare this meeting. And this is really a follow-up to the video meeting that the two presidents had in November, which, we all I think is a necessary thing to have these two leaders communicating frequently, at least by video. And I think that, whether we can put aside the differences up to now, I'm not sure. I'm sure they're talking about some of those bilateral differences as well. But I think this is an opportunity for the two leaders to work together on something that's fundamentally important to both countries' interests and to actually the interests of all the countries in the world to try to bring about this ceasefire. I don't think it'll be very easy to get that ceasefire, so it will take a lot of efforts from a lot of sides to do so.
Professor Yuan Peng from China, now we know that the Russia-Ukraine issue is not just a military conflict between two countries, but also having tremendous impact on peace, stability, food security of the world, the energy security of the world, not to mention the next year. Professor Yuan, how do you see, as the two members of the Security Council, P5, namely, how China and U.S. should shoulder this responsibility, but what is the format of shouldering this responsibility for both of them?
First of all, I think the United States should learn some lessons in the past several years. For example, in dealing with COVID-19, if at the first time American government coordinate and cooperated with China, we wouldn't say that today's bad situation. And now dealing with Russia and the Ukraine crisis, I think I'm afraid America has lost Russia already. And I'm afraid maybe due to its today's policy, it is losing China. So if America loses both Russia and China simultaneously, it should be a very big strategic failure. So if that's the lesson to be learned by the United States, I think this is a good test today, that how can we put aside our differences and disputes aside, and now we coordinate and cooperate in dealing with the urgent crisis first. This is the 50th anniversary of Nixon's visit to Shanghai communique, the big experiences we learned in past 50 years.
Yeah.
I think we need to seize this very good opportunity to show U.S. and China can cooperate.
Okay. Now, Susan, I want to come back to you, Ms. Thornton. Since Professor Yuan talked about who lost Russia and whether China will be lost by the United States, reminds me of an interesting debate going on in the United States right after the PRC was founded about who lost to China. And now we are at a very critical juncture right now. International issues, bilateral issues. Ms. Thornton, how do you see this issue that brought up by Professor Yuan, who lost China? Will U.S. lose China?
Well, I think that the most important thing is that we don't lose the international system as a result of this crisis. And certainly the United States and China are the, kind of underlying foundations of keeping that system going, and the two countries that benefit the most from that system. And so certainly we've seen a huge violation of, I think, not only UN Charter principles, but also just the underlying norm of no territorial conquest in this conflict in Ukraine and Russia's invasion. And certainly the U.S. and China should be the most interested in reshoring up the international system and those principles, or we're going to see an expansion of conflagrations around the world. So certainly I think it's not in U.S. interest to lose both China and Russia and push them closer together. And I hope, as Yuan Peng said, that we can use this crisis as an opportunity to try to right some of the tendencies and trends that we've seen in the recent period.
All right. Professor Shen, your thoughts?
I think this is indeed a crucial time, and it's commendable that the two presidents have conversed on the phone. It's very much needed, and I think the entire world community is watching on this crucial moment. When the two leaders set their principle right and clear, they must have communicated on the issue. What if we don't cooperate? There will be a lot of danger for the region, and probably for Russia, for US, for China. No one can be immune from a situation when major power would not cooperate. But I think it may be more important to communicate what would happen if we cooperate. One should not only talk. If you don't do something, you are going to have a damage. We should also say, America is an expert of using carrot and stick. America should not only be a leader to punish someone, but also should be a leader to shape the world order, to maintain the world order. Then, since Russia has already launched the military action, how America can make a situation when Russia would withdraw, set the ceasefire immediately and withdraw its troops in a certain way, which is not dirty, not look like American withdraw from Afghanistan. So we should respect first Ukraine's legitimate security, its integrity and sovereignty should be respected. Meantime, Russia's legitimate concern say NATO's expansion should not hurt Russia, and Ukraine's central government should protect those Russians living in Ukraine for their security and social welfare should be decently respected. So America, China can each present a formula, and China-U.S. may present a joint formula to sell.
Right. We're running out of time for this round of discussion. Of course, a lot of latest information are coming in as we speak. I want to thank all of you for joining us at this critical hour. This is going to be a very important meeting between China and the United States, the two presidents on the phone. Susan Thornton, Shending Li, Yuan Peng, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate it. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Still to come in the program. The power of architecture to breathe new life in resource-challenged communities, as seen in the work of this year's Pritzker Prize awardee. An exclusive talk about his design philosophy. Next. This is World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. A well-regarded architecture award, the Pritzker Award, announced the 2022 honoree on Tuesday. The Pritzker is always awarded to architects whose work has produced consistent and significant contributions to humanity through the art of architecture. This year, Diébédo Francis Kéré, a talented architect who was born and raised in Western Africa, received the Pritzker Prize. He's known for architecture that empowers and transforms community, especially contemporary school institutions, health facilities, civic buildings, and public spaces in infrastructure-hungry developing countries. Mr. Kéré is known for the smart use of local materials to suit the natural climate. His well-known work for his hometown, Gando Primary School, is a testament for his architectural skills and philosophy. He believes people have the right to enjoy quality, comfort living, even in the developing world. I had an exclusive interview with him, and here is his words.
Great.
Francis, what a pleasure to see you.
Yeah. No, I am very, very honored and happy to be able to speak to you on this great occasion.
You know, I was reading through the materials sent by your friends to me, and it was just amazing how you managed to build so many things: schools, health facilities, museums, you know, parliamentary buildings, and also, you know, for the outdoor festivals, everything. How did you manage to do that? Where does all these inspiration come from?
It's a passion and a love for design. It's the passion and the love to create space that will inspire people, that will give people a chance to celebrate themselves, to stay in intimacy, to be with their friends, to be with their family. It is this love, like that is pushing me to create what I'm doing.
I totally believe in that, because without that, there's no real drive. But, you know, you've been building so many things, including, very low budget school for developing countries, particularly in your home country and home continent, Africa. So what is the architecture with the lowest budget you ever built?
No, it is my very first school, the school that I built in my home village. There was, let me say honestly, there was no budget, you know. And
I thought you were gonna say $1,000 or $2,000, but there's zero budget.
And then, but I had to create a foundation to find people that will donate me the little money that I needed to buy the material. And all the work came from the community. You know, I had to convince everyone to support build the school. And that it happened, and is so making my people today very proud, very proud.
I saw the photo of that school, very unique, and it builds beautifully with the surroundings and the lighting of the day, and also the colors being combined, as well as the local materials. Tell me more about how you came up with that idea. How did it work eventually?
Yeah, we have to say that it's very hot. So in my home country, really, it can be very hot. And at the same time, people are really curious, enthusiastic for new things. And that is another aspect that is important to highlight. People being using clay, like to build their houses for generations. But nowadays people consider clay to be poor people material. So first of all, I needed to improve the quality of clay, just putting a little bit of cement and making bricks that look so regular through compression,
You built after the school, which is your first building, you said. You also built so many other things, like we said earlier, hospitals, parliamentary buildings, and you're building around the world now. But you said famously one thing, which I think really needs to be noted in this interview. You said, it's not because you are rich that you should waste materials. It is not because you are poor that you should not try to create quality. I love that.
Totally. I don't believe so. I think that we have the potential to make the best out of every challenge that we're facing, And for me, it's, I would want to say beauty is the right for everyone, everyone deserve quality and beauty. And that's what I try to do with my project. Generally, when I started to building a school in Africa was considered like something like, they just need it's basic thing. Yeah. And so I didn't accept it. I didn't want to accept it. I wanted to create the best for my people. And so I started to source material, to source way and design how within the budget, let me say again, non-existing budget, how I could create a building like this so that people has great comfort, that lighting system is wonderful using the element, and ventilation through passive element, through design element, and so create a place where the kids are really happy to stay in and where teaching is easy and comfort for everyone.
The materials that you use as an architect very much indicate the ideas that you have about our world and the nature. So how do you see we can combine, the qualities of these materials with some of the most natural-born materials at different places around the world?
No, I mean, this is a fact. Innovation and industry is great. Industrialization is great for our future, but it's also, we have to know that they brought things that are causing a big burden. I'm thinking about plastic and certain other materials that now has become part of our concern. I think the future of architecture will be how we combine all these elements with natural resources to create space for people. Building will still be needed tomorrow, but that is how we balance all of these together. Yeah.
Because you yourself, you grew up on the African continent in Burkina Faso, right? If I remember right. And also you yourself experienced the days when you don't have enough lighting, when you are in a very poorly furnitured or built classroom, when you were a student there. So you know exactly what the student wanted and how to achieve it. You put your heart in it, it seems.
Exactly. In my, when I was a kid, I had to leave my family when I was 7 to go to a city 20 kilometers far to attend education, but 20 kilometers doesn't sound like far. But imagine there is even at that time, no bike. The only one holding bicycle, you could count them. There was only few people in my village owning bicycle, So if you think about transportation and you see that the only means of transportation is a bicycle owned by a few people, and then there is a donkey, then you understand how far 20 kilometers may be, And so I went there to attend school, and then it revolted me to see that outside there was a sunlight so bright, but inside you could barely read because there was no light. There was like tiny little openings, and also it was hot inside. And in my head, let me say, I was growing the idea to make things better one day when I become adult. That is very simple. And so to create better classrooms for kids and even more to do better architecture. Now, that is how it started.
Yeah. And today, of course, you are a very accomplished architect, and also you're winning this year's Pritzker Prize. Congratulations. You've been built so many things on the African continent, including that parliamentary building. People are proud of you, being from where they are. But, you're not only working in that direction, but also serving the world, building architectures around the world with something coming from within where you originally coming from. So that is another direction, but totally fascinating journey as well. Tell me more about that.
And I honestly need to agree that I never, even in my fantasy-full dream about being connected to the Pritzker Foundation. And now it's done. I am deeply connected with it because, as you know, I am laureate. And so, but if I'm like taking my time to really be myself, I will tell you, doing the projects always for me is like, wow, I want to fascinate people. I want to inspire people through my architecture. I want to take elements from my culture, to bring it to places where I think it is needed, to show, the abundance of fantasy, and imagination from my culture. Like if I do a project in the US, I will do everything so that people know this continent has more to deliver than misery, and that is what I'm trying to bring. And then also I'm trying to be careful with material, I think everywhere in the world we need quality as a as I said, and that I'm trying to really think about elements like the environment also, because it is a big concern, and that's what I'm trying to also introduce into my architecture.
Francis Kéré, the awardee for this year's Pritzker Prize for the architecture. That's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to know more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of my team. Thanks for being with us. Bye for now.